The movies of 1999.
So, welcome everybody to episode 18 of the movies of 1999. We're past 1/3 of the year, which is crazy. So, this is a podcast where we watch a movie each week as selected by Bingo Machine. My name is Jason Hutchins.
I'm Craig Talbot, and I'm going to apologise right now for my very croaky voice, listeners.
Little bit under the weather there, Craig. And in this week's show, we are going to be talking about The Winslow Boy, which was the movie that the Bingo Machine selected last week, followed by Mumford, which is the movie that it was paired with. Now, last week I was away up in Kalbarri, so we actually rolled the Bingo Machine a bit earlier. We didn't have a movie night, so Craig and I have watched the movies during the week separately. And stick around at the end of the show where we'll be spinning the Bingo Machine to find out which movies we'll be talking about this time next week. And as usual, Craig will have a very interesting intermission planned for us between the two movies. So to kick things off this week, I think we'll go straight to ChatGPT to hear its synopsis for the movie The Winslow Boy. So over to you, ChatGPT.
In The Winslow Boy, 1999, directed by David Mamet, based on Terence Rattigan's play, the Winslow family is thrown into turmoil when their youngest son, Ronnie, Guy Edwards, is accused of stealing and is expelled from Naval College. Determined to clear his name, the family rallies around him, led by his steadfast father, Arthur Winslow, Nigel Hawthorne. As they pursue justice against the might of the British government, they are faced with moral dilemmas and personal sacrifices. With stellar performances from Jeremy Northam as Sir Robert Morton, the renowned barrister, and Rebecca Pidgeon as Catherine Winslow, the suffragette sister, The Winslow Boy is a gripping tale of integrity, family bonds, and the pursuit of truth in the face of adversity.
And there you go. That's the synopsis of The Winslow Boy. And Craig, what did you think of this movie?
Well, anything with Nigel Hawthorne in it, I'm going to love. So,
I totally forgot. We're supposed to talk about why I selected The Winslow Boy. You reminded
there you
me.
go.
So the reason why I selected The Winslow Boy, firstly, is because Nigel Hawthorne, what a champ.
Yeah.
So you and I, of course, would remember him from Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. I used to watch that
Definitely.
religiously.
Yes.
But I also selected this movie because it's a David Mamet movie. So David Mamet being the playwright, best known maybe for Glengarry Glen Ross. He wrote and directed this movie, but this movie is based on a play that was written by another person. So they're really the two reasons why I selected this movie. But anyway, what did you think of it?
Well, yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I actually watched the prior movie, the 1948 version as well. So I actually found the 1948 version, because I watched it first before I watched this one. I found it very straightforward. It's obviously very old-fashioned, set in the 1900s, but filmed in 1948. I actually really enjoyed that movie, and I found it helped explain this movie, because obviously both of them being based on a play, there's bits that each movie emphasizes that's different, and they tend to stay in particular locations because, that's how play works.
Yeah.
A lot of locations. So, I mean, this movie's got a 97% Rotten Tomatoes score, which would have to be one of the highest.
That's amazing, isn't it? That's for the critic score.
That was a critic score, and a 78% user score. Look, I don't think, funnily enough, I don't think the 1999 adaptation is actually as good as the 1948 one. I found the 1948 one an easier one to watch, because it actually showed things like the court scenes and things like that, which this movie doesn't. This movie very much focuses on the relationship between Nigel Hawthorne and his daughter and his son.
It's the family.
It's very much
It focuses
it's
on
around
the
the house.
Yeah.
It focuses on the family, which is probably true to the play, to be fair. I haven't read the play, but I'm guessing it's very true to the play. I found the 1948 one filled in a lot of gaps that I wouldn't have quite understood otherwise. But anyway, nonetheless, anything with Nigel Hawthorne in it is brilliant. Love Nigel Hawthorne. I thought the other actors were very good. I thought the only one I was a little bit disappointed in was the actor Jeremy Northam, but it may have been that he was very constrained by his character. I just found him a little bit wooden. But again, to be fair, in the 1948 movie, his character is quite wooden as well, though he probably has a little bit more personality. I think Jeremy Northam played it very, 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 very straight, and probably struggled with the role a little bit. I think.
I didn't get that.
I mean,
vibe.
I thought it. Look, I thought he was good, but I just felt it was a little bit too restrained. But it may be that it's not his comfort point, though he's done movies like this in the past.
I think to an extent it's David Mamet's direction. Like the performances that he goes for are very much like the performances that you'd get in a stage play. So they're not sort of realistic performances like you would see in a lot of other movies. They are sort of exaggerated, in a sense, because also Catherine, the daughter, has that sort of performance as well. Like, it's not quite believable or naturalistic. I thought Nigel Hawthorne was amazing. Like what he can do with a facial expression.
Yes.
It was more than just a filmed stage play for that reason, because it did cut away and emphasize facial expressions and things like that. I also loved the political cartoons, how they would cut away to the newspaperman every now and again. You know, back at that time, the newspapers were constantly printing. You'd get like 6 editions a day, and you sort of hear the newspaper boy on the street calling out the latest editions available, and just the political cartoons to summarize what was happening in the broader society, because the whole nation was captivated by this case, but the movie itself just focuses on the family side of it. So, but yeah, it was just really good. Nigel Hawthorne, of course, has already been in one movie this year. Can you remember what it was?
No, I don't actually.
He was in Tarzan. He was the old.
Oh, that's right.
He was the old dad
Tarzan.
in Tarzan.
That's right. Yes, he was.
And we've had some David Mamet involvement, because he rewrote some of the dialogue in Ronin. And I think the dialogue in this movie is really, really well written. I loved a lot of the biblical references and things, these quotes that they come out with. Yeah, very, very good. And
look, it's worth seeing the 1948 version though.
Well, I might have to add that to my list. Yeah. But I'll watch it the other way around to what you did. But I watched this movie once by myself, and then at the end, I was like, oh, Dana's going to love this. So we watched it together a second time. And to me, this is my kind of romance movie, as opposed to like the very saccharine movies, like, or the over-the-top romances like we had with the Thomas Crown Affair and Mansfield Park. The romance in this movie, like between the conservative politician / lawyer, Sir Robert, which is your Jeremy Northam.
Yeah.
And the very sort of left suffragette character of Catherine. And it's very understated, and it sort of has that resolution at the end of the movie where you know that they are going to get together, but you don't have to see it all.
No.
You just see there. But basically he says about her, oh, are you cross-examining me? And that sort of stuff. So that, a lot of their romance is basically arguing her thinking that that he's a very conservative, right-leaning, person that doesn't have any empathy, and then so forth. And that all gets resolved quite nicely.
He does come across as a little bit of a Dr. Spock. He goes on about, logic is all that matters in the law. So, you've got to take emotion out of it and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So, bit of a Dr. Spock moment towards the end there, I thought.
But then, of course, he cries when the verdict comes through. So
yes, that's true.
So,
look, as I said, a very good movie. I did enjoy this. I think having seen both of them was an interesting experience, in the sense that I had a better appreciation for both of them, because I understood the story a bit better.
Yeah.
Because there were bits of the story that the 1999 one left out or didn't emphasise quite as much. So in the 1948 version, for example, you see the court scene and you see the...
Yeah, well, I felt it worked without that. And I did like the emphasis on the family. And obviously, everyone loves each other, like within this family unit. And the head of the family, Nigel Hawthorne's character, Arthur, he goes to such a great extent to defend the honour of his 14-year-old son, which is just ridiculous to think that somebody would, almost bring their household to ruin, like to financial ruin.
Yes. right.
to do that. And I think they ask him in the movie, "Are you doing it?" What was the question that was put to him? Is it his wife says, "Is it your pride or is it justice?" And he says, "No, it's justice." And
Yeah,
it's very very honourable, I think, and it's nice to watch somebody take honour to that level, I guess.
and I think later in the movie, Jeremy Northam's character says it's very easy to do justice, but it's very hard to do what is right.
Yes,
So
yes.
just to re-emphasize that, and that comes from the play because that was in both versions.
Yeah,
but
that thing that the Attorney General says or something, do what's right or something like that. Because the
Yes.
idea is that you can't bring a case against the Admiralty, against the Crown, because, but there's a case where that can be overridden in order to do what's right.
interestingly, this is actually based on a true story.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, there was a case in 1908 of this very thing, and it wasn't the father in that particular case that brought the case. It was actually the little boys. So the boy, I can't remember his name now, but the boy who was involved, his brother was a major in the army, and he brought the case. And in 1908, they won the case, and the Admiralty or government had to apologise, and they got compensation.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there is a sad note to that because he died in the war fairly soon after, this young boy.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but okay, yeah. Well, I mean, the whole world is going to change massively within a few years.
Yeah.
So this is that period of time when Europe is very confident in itself, and honor, and you see everything about how Europe was in this particular movie, and all of that becomes, much like in that particular popular TV series, the same sort of thing happens. The one Downton Abbey is the one I'm thinking of. You see the same sort of thing. The British, the European aristocracy at the height of its powers at this time, and then the war basically rips all of that apart. The folly of it all.
But it is nice that it was a true story that inspired the play, which then inspired this movie version. And I think David Mamet, I mean, he's from Chicago. He did write a lot of plays and put on a lot of plays himself. And I think he wanted to create a play, like a modern version of this story as a stage play. And it's only when he failed to do that he decided to make it as a movie instead.
Yeah, I struggled to find out. His biography is a little bit confusing because he's done a lot of writing. I couldn't work out how many movies he's actually directed. So
not very many, I don't think.
No. Interesting little thing. The little boy in the 1948 movie actually comes back in this movie as the Lord of the Admiralty.
No way.
So the guy who's the first Lord of the Admiralty in this movie is the guy who played the boy in the original movie.
Oh, that's amazing.
And David Mamet claims that he didn't know that was the case before he cast. Robert North, I think, is the...
That seems unlikely, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, that's what he said. So, so...
Maybe he didn't know, but the casting agent must have known.
Well, given that this particular actor has only done a small number of movies, he's probably most famous for his role in... other than the Winslow Boy movies, Billy Elliot. He's involved with Billy Elliot.
Oh, okay.
So, it's a 2000 movie, so I'm allowed to mention that name.
Ah, okay, dodged a bullet there. So, right, Neil North, First Lord of the Admiralty. So he's the guy that's giving a lot of speeches in Parliament, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, no, not in Parliament. No, he's the man who they meet, who tells them that they can't bring a case against the Crown.
Oh, okay.
So, so he wouldn't have been in Parliament.
Oh, he looks like the guy that was in Parliament. You know, the guy who gives a big long speech and he says, "I'm still standing, sir." Okay.
Yeah, it's not that guy. No, different guy. No, no, the Admiralty wouldn't be in Parliament. That would be a huge breach of the rules or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, no, but it's interesting. Did you know that David Mamet liked to cast his wife?
Yeah, I did read that Catherine is his wife, yeah.
Yeah, so she's Rebecca Pidgeon was his wife at the time, and apparently his previous wife is also in some movies that he was involved in as
Mm.
well.
He's very family. He's a family man making family movies.
So, yeah.
Uh,
It's not what you know, it's who you know, isn't it? Yeah. So actually, I didn't realize, but the play actually came out in 1946. So written by Terence Rattigan. So it was only a couple of years before they adapted it into a movie. It was filmed. This particular film was shown at the Cannes Film Festival in 1999.
mm.
Sadly, though, it only made $3.96 million. I couldn't find out in the time that I had available how much it cost to make, but at that kind of figure, you'd have to say it was a failure in the box office, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I'd never heard of this movie before, so. But like we always say, it was a very busy year for movies, so it was lost in the noise,
Yes,
maybe.
that's right. Yeah, it's a shame because it's a really good movie.
It is, and David and Margaret both gave it 4 stars. Unfortunately, they didn't record a video, so they only wrote a review of it, which is available on the SBS website. So there's no audio over them, over the end credits today of their review.
Oh, okay. Bit of a shame.
So it's the first one where we haven't had a David and Margaret review, but they did give it 4 stars.
Unfortunately for this movie, there is not a lot of factoids. I couldn't track down a huge amount of information. It's actually, this one and the next movie are actually quite hard to find information on, probably because they were in a very busy year. Yeah, quite difficult. Difficult movie to get info on, unfortunately. Not a lot is written about it. Unlike a lot of the movies that we've seen, and probably because it was a British movie as well.
Well,
Not
what were the
quite as-
reviews on Rotten Tomatoes like? You always like to read your variety.
Oh, okay. Well,
What did
the
it-
variety review is done. Is this done by my mate who can't talk, or is it the other one?
Oh, the Thesps
Ah.
guy.
No, this is done by a guy called Dennis Harvey. So they must have had a few reviewers. May have been done later in the piece. Oh no, he falls for the same thing. So he says modern ords may have trouble accepting. I don't know what an ord is.
What
so,
an orns
No.
is.
That a schoolboy sacking offers paid enough injustice. Let right be done and all that kind of stuff. I think this would have been a movie that would have probably not gone across as well in America as it would have in other parts of the world.
Mm.
Probably because Nigel Hawthorne wasn't as well known,
No,
certainly in the US.
but isn't it amazing that David Mamet from Chicago wrote and directed this, because it is such a British movie, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like
it
you,
is very much.
you just don't detect the hand of an American, writer and director.
Yeah, yeah. This is another one of those people who can't use English, so it's quite hard
Mm.
to read their review. But this review claims that Pigeon is the picture's major problem, or Pic's major problem, as it says here, because again, can't use English. Her accent is credible enough, but she looks right as in. I'm trying to understand what is written here. They seem to not like the character of Catherine, which I didn't actually think was too bad.
Yeah, I can
I thought she
understand.
was pretty good.
I can understand that her performance might be grating for some people because it is very toneless, like fairly one-dimensional. But I think that's in line with the character. Like, she's a very serious person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the character in the 1948 movie is also very serious.
Mm.
She's a 30-year-old spinster, I think they still called them back then,
Okay.
living at home, and so she's still quite a serious character who's
Yeah.
very heavily into the
Yeah, she's reading the social
suffragette
good
movement.
and
all of that sort of stuff. So that's obviously part of the play, and that's part of her character.
Yeah,
So yeah, it would be. I think and I think that's the case with Sir Robert Norton's character as well. It's
Yes.
a difficult character to pull off.
yeah.
He has to be kind of emotionless because that's what he claims to be,
Mm.
based on logic, not.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure, but both of the characters appealed to me, but maybe that says something about me.
I don't know. I didn't mind Robert Norton. I just thought the portrayal of Robert Norton was better in the 1948 movie. But as again, an interesting movie, but a difficult one to get. You asked about. Oops, I've just closed Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, that's all right. Well, yeah, this is a movie that I think it would have worked well on a movie night. I think people would have enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I would recommend to listeners that if you've not heard of The Winslow Boy, track it down and have a watch because it's really, really good.
I would imagine that it would have gone well because I think no one would have seen it. So all of our reactions would have been fairly. I doubt if many of your friends would have seen that.
No, I don't think anyone would have
Yeah.
seen it.
Possibly. I don't know. But it's not one I had heard of. It's interesting. The reviews, an intelligent and very satisfying work of art. One person who gave it Rotten Tomatoes said the filmmaking seems to be stuck in 1912, but I think they kind of missed the whole point of the movie at that point. Yeah, a lot of comments about it being sort of style over substance, which I think is unfair.
No, the dialogue is
I don't
so
think-
clever and so interesting. And I tell you what, when I put this movie in my list, all I knew was the synopsis of it, and it sounds like the most boring movie where it's like a 14-year-old boy is accused of stealing a postal order and his father defends him. It doesn't sound like it would be a very interesting movie to watch, but the story that they draw out of that concept, like that, it just works so well. And
Well, Roger Ebert actually gave this 3.5 out of 4, which is
it's
probably one of his better scores.
mm,
He actually really liked this movie. So the real drama isn't about poor little Ronnie, but about the passions he has unleashed in his household between his parents and between his sister and her suitors, the declared and undeclared ones. I mean, she's got lots of suitors. I found it interesting because obviously a lot of her suitors are a lot older than her, other than Robert Norton. So I found that an interesting little comment on how the world has changed. I can't imagine that happening now.
So yeah, I really like that quote. You shall not side with the great against the powerless, and that's what convinced them to take the case basically. And I have tracked down a photo of your Neil North, and it is the guy. I knew it was the guy.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's the guy who's in.
So
I don't think he.
I just sent you a link on WhatsApp. Have a look at that. That's him when he's a kid, and then that's him in the 1999 version. That's the guy that I thought he was. So he's the guy that's pontificating, and the guy who's ultimately swayed by that
Okay.
quote that you
Oh,
shall
okay,
not
so
side
actually,
with the mighty
That
against
kind
the
of does
powerless.
make sense. Now that I think about it, so the context for that would be that wouldn't have been in the House of Commons, but it would have been in the House of Lords.
Yes,
So
House of Lords.
this action would have been happening in the House of Lords because he was the First Lord of the Admiralty. So I apologise, I got my history wrong. It would have been in the House of Lords that they had that debate.
Because I could think,
Yeah.
because it is like a stage play, there's not a lot of characters, and you kind of get to know the characters that are there. You get to know them quite well.
Yeah.
It's only like a dozen actors or something like that. But yeah, I thought he looked familiar. But there you go.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how he was the boy in the original movie, and then he was the Lord of the Admiralty in the 1999?
And it's
version?
funny because the boy in the 1999 movie looks remarkably like the boy in the 1948 movie. They're very similar. They are almost peas in a pod, you might say. The 1948 movie is quite interesting because in that movie the father is a much more reserved and gruff character than Nigel Hawthorne is. As you say, Nigel Hawthorne can do an enormous amount with a look, an expression, a facial expression. And in the 1948 version, the father character, I don't think he has a single facial expression in the entire movie.
That's how
very
they did
reserved.
it back in those days.
Yeah, very, very reserved and very, very.
The fact that he only had to ask his son, and then just knew that his son was telling the truth. I found that really moving as well. Like their relationship was so close.
Yes.
That he wasn't angry with him. He just asked him, "Did you steal it?" "No, father, I didn't." And
I would have thought that that's a pretty unusual relationship for a boy to have with his father in the 1900s.
at that time.
Yeah.
But he was an interesting
yeah.
father because, of course, his other two children have their quirks as well, and he fully
Yes,
supports them. His daughter, the stay-at-home 30-year-old who's a volunteer in the suffragette movement, fully supports her. Regardless of her suitor and all of that sort of stuff.
All of that sort of stuff.
And his son, who's a gambler and a failing student at Oxford, supports him as well. So
Yeah, and his favourite thing is the bunny hug, apparently.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not sure, but I'm not sure.
But
what
it's
to think
funny
about
because
that, but-
it comes up in both of the movies. The whole bunny hug.
Does it
and
really?
all the different variations of those particular. So they obviously were a thing from the time.
Mm.
The different dance. I mean, I know that at the time the different dances. That's what craze was.
Yes.
You know. Yeah. So interesting. Anyway,
It is funny looking at IMDb, reading up on Neil North, because his acting credits are The Winslow Boy, 1948, and The Winslow Boy, 1999, and then Billy Elliot. So-
yeah, and that's pretty much it.
So funny.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I reckon that's your best factoid, Craig.
I think he's. I mean, he's listed as an actor, so it's interesting that he's listed as an actor and he's done 3 movies.
And
But he's obviously done other things.
just this 50-year hiatus between movies.
Oh, he's obviously done other things, so he must have done other work.
Anyway,
I mean, for him to.
well, I was just saying I can hear some approaching music.
Oh God, which one?
There's-
I see you actually changed the music this week just to stuff me around. But anyway, it's all very good.
I used your original music.
Did you?
Yeah, your 30-second epic.
No, that's not my original music. Oh, you mean original as in created by me?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. I do like that music. So thank you, Jason, for.
Well, I hear it approaching, so it must be time for the intermission.
Yay.
Take a break, let your thoughts unwind. In this dreadful space, you will find intermission.
Don't you dare keep that yay. Welcome, everyone, to the intermission. All right, we're going to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane today to the late 1990s and to a thing that everyone's forgotten about now, but was pretty big in our lives back then, called the dot-com bubble. Do you remember the dot-com bubble, Jason?
I do remember it very well.
In fact, you were probably involved in the old dot-com bubble, probably one of the companies
Well,
or other that
slightly
you
involved.
worked for at the time. Been slightly involved? Look, I wasn't involved at all. I was working for a computer company at the time, but we did watch it all with a bit of bemusement from our desks at the time. And so 2 of the companies that were the most popular websites in 1999, and this is probably going to surprise some people who don't remember this very well, were Yahoo, which was probably one of the biggest websites across the whole world at this time, and AOL, which would have been the largest website, certainly in the US at this time. The most popular, the most visited websites I'm talking about here. So AOL is actually called America Online and was a household name at this time, and it still comes up quite a lot in movies and TV series. You know, people still talk about it quite a lot. I don't think it actually exists as a company anymore, but it was pretty huge at the time, as was Yahoo. I mean, Yahoo, I think, is still struggling along in one form or another even today, but not anywhere near as important as it was back then. I can remember having a Yahoo email account, which was probably one of my first web email accounts. Don't know about you, Jace, but probably was. I remember having a Bigfoot account as well, something like that. Anyway, so Yahoo was riding very high on the wave of the internet revolution in 1999. At this time, internet companies were experiencing, it says here, astronomical stock valuations, even though many of them had little or no earnings and their market caps reached absolutely enormous levels. Probably parallels with today still, I would imagine. It was probably coming to the end of that period, though. In 1999, there was quite a bit of a crash at that time. Yahoo in 1999 was earning about $16 million a quarter in terms of profit, but they were turning over about $200-300 million in revenue. Again, the advertising now, which is so based around, as you mentioned before in the pre-talk that we had, Google's turn to advertising and all that kind of stuff. Now, advertisers spend most of their money on YouTube and Google and all of these sorts of services. But at this time, this was still new. TV was probably still the primary advertising spend, I guess you might say.
Right. We were just emerging from this time where you didn't see any ads on the internet at all.
Yeah, that's right.
And they slowly introduced ads, but the ads weren't targeted in any way. But Google eventually figured that out, and it became their cash cow. Yeah.
So obviously there was a lot of speculation at this time. Yahoo's stock peaked to around about $500 a share in December 1999, which was pretty enormous at this time, and it was, to a lot of people, it was going to be the big thing for the next decade, and yet, only a year later, with the introduction of Google search, the world changed forever, and Yahoo's become a side note in all of that history. And then in 2004, obviously we're going forward a little bit, Google introduced 1 gig of storage. Jason, do you remember how big deal that was?
Crazy.
1 gig of storage for your email.
That's going to last forever.
I got my Google account in 2004 through a friend of mine, and I still have one. So there you go. AOL, on the other hand, so AOL had a pretty busy year that year. They spent an enormous amount of money in 1999. They had launched AOL Search, their own search engine. They had 10 million users in 1999, which doesn't sound like a lot today, but was enormous at the time. They spent an enormous amount of money. So they spent $800 million on Gateway Computer. I don't know if you remember Gateway Computer, Jason. They're the ones with the cow boxes, They've also bought a company called CompuServe, which gave AOL an additional 2.2 million subscribers. CompuServe being one of the original internet access. What do we call? Well, we call them ISPs now, don't we?
Like
so
a portal or something.
Yeah, very well. CompuServe was a very early ISP as well. Because in this time, I'm struggling to remember, but I'm pretty sure we were still accessing the internet by modem in 1999. Would that be right, Jace? Do you reckon?
In
still
99,
mostly not.
For most people, yeah, because I remember I moved to the UK in late 99, and probably it wasn't until 2000 where we got a little dongle that allowed us to have ADSL access. So that was like a step
Yeah,
above
I know. Definitely
modem.
in Australia, we were still doing it by modem. Because I had a ISDN link at the company that I worked at, which was a massive thing at the time because it was 64K up and down, but it was consistent.
Bandwidth.
Yeah, the bandwidth. It was amazing. Do you know how much that cost us at the time?
No.
That was $1,000 a month.
Jeez.
It was called a T1. It was a T1. Anyway, it was an ISDN link, and it was $1,000 a month that cost my company at the time.
So do you...
The 64K of bandwidth.
Do you remember at that time trying to download movie trailers to watch? Because I remember that...
Took forever.
Like a big movie, for example, there's one that's quite relevant to today's date that came out in 1999.
Yes, I know.
And if you go to Disney Plus, you'll see that they have the 25th anniversary release of that movie.
Yes.
I remember downloading the trailer for that, and you'd basically leave it going overnight and come back in the morning, and you'd have this tiny little postage stamp sized grainy video playing on your desktop, and you could watch the trailer if the download succeeded. Yeah, it's amazing to think how far we've come.
It was a different world back then. AOL actually also acquired a company called MapQuest for $1.1 billion, which is an awful lot of money at the time. And MapQuest at that time, again, was one of these companies that was thought to go on to be massive because they had an online mapping and directors surf. Again, a new concept at the time, one we just take for granted with Google Maps now.
Yeah.
So a MapQuest was... So I thought it was interesting to look back at these old websites pre-Google becoming a really big thing because this was what our internet looked like back then.
Well, Yahoo's really interesting because they tried to acquire both Google and Facebook during the early days of those companies, and the world would have been a very different place if those acquisitions went through.
Yeah, I think they tried to pay $3 billion for Google, and they actually used, so they very soon after this, they switched over from their own internal search engine to Google's one, and then tried to buy Google for $3 billion. And Google came back with an offer of $5 billion, and Yahoo walked at it.
Well, in hindsight, that was a terrible decision.
It was. But then, would Google have been the next big thing if they had been bought by Yahoo? Probably not, because all of the other companies that we're talking about here, every single one of them disappeared. So MapQuest, Gateway hung around for a long time, but I don't think it ever made back its $800 million. I think it still exists as a brand, but that's about it. I mean, CompuServe disappeared fairly quickly, and MapQuest, I would imagine. I don't know when Google released Google Maps. Probably not until the the later 2000
Mm.
period. So
I don't know,
2008, 2009, around there.
Well, it was in the early 2000s where it was starting to, maybe 2004.
I think a lot of their services were released in 2004. They had a big. It's actually quite funny to look. A lot of the services that we rely on Google now all came out in 2004.
It says 2005, early 2005.
There you go, 2004, 2005. So that's amazing, really, to think that Google's, we're talking 20 years later, and they haven't really moved away from those central things. Like, despite all their attempts to try all these different businesses and all that kind of stuff, and they as you know, Google is constantly criticized for dropping things.
Yeah, killing its products like Google Reader,
like Google
and
Copcast,
Google Wave, and stuff like that.
I just deleted Google Podcasts off my phone today because there's no point in having it anymore. So, and I actually quite liked Google Podcasts. I don't really understand why they got rid. I mean, I'm very happy with Pocket Cast. That's my podcast listener of choice these days. And it's an excellent product. But yeah, just dropped it. They just decided they didn't need it anymore.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Yeah.
Google, what are you doing?
But anyway, that's a little bit of a look back to 1999 and the websites that we were looking at. So Yahoo was probably the biggest one, and also the sheer amounts of money that were being thrown around back then. I mean, now it's all because of AI, but at this point, search was the big thing.
Yeah.
If you could win the hearts and minds for people searching on the internet, you were going to be. And this little tiny company called Google came out of nowhere and basically beat everyone.
Interesting. So that's the intermission. And now let's go over to ChatGPT for its reflections on Mumford.
In Mumford, 1999, directed by Lawrence Kasdan, a small town gets a dose of unexpected therapy when a mysterious psychologist, Dr. Mumford, Lauren Dean, arrives. Using unconventional methods and genuine empathy, Mumford quickly becomes the confidant of various quirky townsfolk, including Althea Brockett, Mary McDonnell, Lionel Dillard, Alfre Woodard, and Skip Skipperton, Jason Lee. However, as he helps them navigate their personal struggles and relationships, questions arise about his own past and qualifications. With its ensemble cast and exploration of human connection, Mumford shares thematic similarities with The Winslow Boy, delving into the complexities of identity, community, and the transformative power of understanding and acceptance.
And there you go. So ChatGPT would have mentioned its link between Mumford and The Winslow Boy, but I forgot to ask at the beginning, what do you think my reason is for pairing these two movies together?
This is a difficult one, actually. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
They're similar they're both stories of, I guess, people kind of doing the wrong thing, but then being redeemed in the end.
Yeah. Or maybe the idea of truth-telling, because that's probably more central to both of those stories. But I don't think I had a reason apart from the fact that they both had interesting surnames, Mumford and Winslow.
Well, I tell you what, searching for Mumford the movie is very hard because it's every time you search for Mumford, you get all this other stuff because there's lots of people named Mumford.
Well, there's a band, isn't there, called Mumford or something? Yeah,
and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff related to Mumford. That's right. So it was actually quite tricky narrowing down information about Mumford the movie.
Mumford and Sons is the band.
I'm just going to go AFK for a couple of seconds. Sorry.
That's okay. Keep recording. Bye, Craig. That's it. He's walked out. He's done it again. First with Eyes Wide Shut, now with Mumford. So we've touched a nerve somehow. So listeners, all I see right now is an empty room. Absent. Craig's gone. He's left the podcast. After 18 episodes, he's had enough. No, I think he's gone to clear house a little bit because he's not feeling too well. It's an out-of-focus bookshelf in the background there. The problem is I've stopped editing these podcasts, so this section might not get cut out because editing just takes so long. Here he is. He's come back. He's back again. He's wondering what I'm saying. Headphones on. Hello.
Hi there.
So, Craig, Mumford, what did you think of this movie?
I actually really liked this movie as well. This is the second week in a row that I've actually liked your choices, Jason.
And it would have been a good movie night movie as well.
I think this was it's probably a really underrated movie.
Yeah.
It only got 58% from Rotten Tomatoes critic scores. 65% subsequently. I feel it's a bit. I feel like this is one of those ones that's a little bit underrated.
I reckon at the time, maybe this movie wouldn't have stood out, but these days you just don't see movies like this.
No.
And we really enjoyed it. It reminded me
Yeah,
a bit of the Gilmore Girls. You know, it's this low key, quirky comedy set in a little town where a cafe plays a central role. It almost could have been a TV series. I could imagine this being resurrected as a TV series.
Yeah. So directed by Lawrence Kasdan, who is famous for a lot of the Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars films.
As a
Apparently,
screenwriter, yeah.
As a screenwriter, yeah. He's co-writer of Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and a bunch of other Raiders of the Lost Ark.
May the
all of
fourth
that
be
sort of
with
stuff.
him.
May the 4th. Yes, well, I was going to say May the 4th be with you, but then I thought you'd tell me off. So, so anyway, there's an event I could have gone to this morning, Jason, but I didn't because I'm.
There's an event, really.
In East Perth, in the park, there's the May the 4th be with you event.
Wow.
There's probably some stormtroopers wandering around
Right.
Perth as we speak. I'm not one of those. I'm not right into the hole, but there's a dedicated chapter of stormtroopers here in Perth. Who dress up fairly regularly. I've come across them before. Yeah, he's known for The Bodyguard, The Body Heat, Big Chill, Silverado, The Accidental Tourist. So yeah, I don't know how many of those. Oh, he's the writer director of those ones, and he wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is probably one of the better, if not the best, of the Indiana Jones movies.
So this is the sort of comedy movie that really appeals to me, like these low-key performances. Like, it's not played for laughs. It's got the wonderful Martin Short in the movie in a fairly minor role. He's hilarious, but he's not playing for laughs. But he just made me laugh out loud. Ted Danson as well, I thought was really funny. It was great to see Elizabeth Moss again. She was in Girl Interrupted last week. And of course, we know her from The West Wing. Jason Lee played a billionaire, a dot-com billionaire almost.
Yes, and I really liked his performance.
Yeah, he was.
I really enjoyed his character.
Yeah, he came across as really charming, but he was building like a robot girlfriend, which was kind of a bit funny.
Yeah,
but,
when you saw that at the end. Yeah,
but
and he kept saying, "Don't you think this is really creepy and weird? Don't you think?" I'm like, he kept saying it because he knew the answer.
Yeah,
but it's like, but that Mumford just sort of like, oh no, it's fine.
So we saw him get crushed by a truck in Enemy of the State when he was riding on his bicycle down a freeway tunnel. And at the beginning of this movie, because he was a professional skateboarder, and the skateboard features in this movie quite a bit, and he does all his own skateboarding. But at the beginning, they say something like, if he gets hit by a truck, half the town will be out of work. And
that's right.
Of course, in Enemy of the State, he did get hit by a truck, so that was a bit of serendipity. But all of the characters are interesting and quirky, and they all have. So the conceit of this movie is that Mumford is the town's psychologist. So there's two psychologists and one psychiatrist in the town.
That's right.
I never quite know the difference.
Well, the psychiatrist is a doctor.
One of them can prescribe medication, the other one can't. But the whole conceit of it is that all of these people who have quirky lives, they've got some issue to talk to him about, and then he explores that. So I think it would have worked really well as a TV series because you introduce this cast of characters. I really like the guy who was hung up on his fantasies, but all of his fantasies were like film noir stories.
Yeah, that's right.
And the movie begins as a black and white film noir movie, and you're wondering what the hell's going on, and it's because one of the patients is describing a fantasy.
And he stops him before it gets interesting.
Yes,
but anyway,
it's very well done. And
I actually really liked this movie. Like you, I watched that first little sequence and thought, what the hell are we getting into here?
It's Pleasantville all over again.
Yeah, it did feel a bit like that, didn't it? Especially after having watched Pleasantville. Yeah, I think that's right. But no, it was an excellent movie. I didn't realize Lawrence Kasdan was also not involved in The Big Chill.
Mm.
So that's a that's quite.
Quite a resume.
And I thought Lauren Dean's performance as Dr. Mumford was really rather good, rather like a little bit understated, but
That's what I
good
liked about it.
nonetheless.
Everything was low
Yeah.
key, understated, but hilarious. And that's my kind
Yeah.
of comedy. They weren't sort of going for obvious laughs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I laughed out loud in this movie, but I did enjoy it. Yeah.
I laughed out loud a couple of times.
The scene in the lab where they have the bits of girl and they went
Yeah.
a bit over the top
The-
with the LED lighting and stuff like
The
that. I thought that
prototypes,
was
yes.
yeah, yeah.
And I thought
the-
so he's a billionaire, but he's made his money by selling modems, and he repeats that 23% of the modems in the world are sold by his company, but the name of his company is Panda Modem, which is just so silly.
Yeah,
Pandemonium.
yeah. So it's set in the little town of Mumford, another small town movie. It's like the second small town movie that we've had. I must admit, I just found the whole movie, the way he spoke to his patients. The only character I didn't quite understand was the girl who came to see him, who was like the one that was obsessed with magazines, and
Right.
all of that sort of stuff.
Dieting
That
and
character,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, that character. I guess they put it in there because it's like a '90s thing, but that one didn't quite fit the rest of them.
Very much so.
But the rest of them,
We've had similar characters in a few of the movies we've seen, yeah.
yeah, I just didn't quite understand why that one was in there. Like all the other ones kind of resolved, and her one I wasn't sure about. But anyway, look, it was.
Mm.
It's got quite a good soundtrack on it. This one,
Yeah.
interesting for its discussion of the disease chronic fatigue syndrome, because I'm not sure that was a big thing until
No.
the 1990s or 2000s.
No, that's it.
Or not a well understood
It
thing.
wasn't
it's
well
much better
understood, and it
now.
had a whole internet sequence where he pulled up his Alta Vista or Yahoo or something
That's
and
right.
searched for
yeah.
the symptoms. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't a well understood thing. So it was interesting that this is a movie discussing that syndrome, because it was something that was happening at the time, but not well known by people. There was this whole thing where he was falling in love with one of his patients, which is, probably, I suspect his sentence would be much harsher now than it was in this movie. Though, mind you, he wasn't a real psychologist anyway, so it's
That's right.
kind of moot, isn't it? Yeah.
So one thing I didn't understand is why did he go on runs up to the top of the mountain and then put a headlamp on when the sun
'cause he
set?
had-
That didn't make any
Because
sense.
he had to get back down again, I assume, and he had to be able to see as he got down. That was a really central thing in the movie, wasn't it? Because they used that scene about 3 or 4 times of him sitting on top of the mountain.
Yeah, overlooking the town,
So-
and I kind of get
Yeah.
that to a certain extent. And another laugh out loud moment was Unsolved Mysteries. I watched that a bit back in the day, and the Unsolved Mysteries guy
Yeah. That
was
was the
credited
guy.
in the movie because obviously one of the mysteries is relevant to his story. But there's a moment when he's watching it and they reveal something on the TV show. They reveal something incriminating, and he pokes his head out the front door of his house, and he can see, like, all down the street, the flickering blue light of the television in everyone's windows. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah.
It was quite funny. But obviously at this time, the idea that everyone was watching the same TV
Same
show at the same time.
Yes, it's a world that's gone now.
Yeah.
Like the idea of being able to go to work and talk about the show that you watched on TV last night
Yeah.
disappeared forever. Yeah.
But yeah, it was really well done. And I would like to see this, rebooted as a Netflix series or something. I think it would work really well.
Yeah, I thought all of the actors were really good in this movie. The character played by who was the lady that was his landlady? Is that Alfred Woodard? Lily?
The landlady, I'm not sure. Oh, Lily. Yes, his next door neighbour, the
Yeah.
lady who
Well,
runs the cafe. Yeah, Alfred
Yeah, she's-
Woodard.
Yeah, she was very good, I thought.
Yeah.
I've seen her in a lot of stuff. Yeah, she's been nominated for an Oscar.
Oh, really? Yeah, she was good. They were all good. Very, very good. Anyway, another one, listeners, if you have never watched Mumford, track down a copy. And same as the Winslow Boy. These were hard to find. I think I had to rent the Winslow Boy, but Mumford isn't even available for rent, as far as I could tell.
No. I can't remember where I got the Mumford from, but I think I probably had to resort to slightly
The
legal
dark
methods to
web.
watch it. The dark web. But a lot of these movies that are difficult to get hold of are available on the Internet Movie Database. And not IMDb, I mean the Internet Archive.
Yes,
database.
yes. So, do we have much more to say about Mumford apart from it was an enjoyable movie? It probably belonged on my A-list. I would happily swap it out with some of the other A-list movies that we've seen.
It's another one of those ones where we could have had it on the A-list and we wouldn't have minded.
It would have been a crowd pleaser at the movie night for sure. It was very interesting, well acted, funny, filled with quirky characters. Yeah, it's all you want with a comedy. It worked very, very well.
Enjoyable.
Oh, there you go. So, what do we do now? So, I think now it's time to cut live, as Craig stifles another cough, to the dropping of the bingo balls, where we'll find out which two movies we'll be talking about on next week's show. So, over to you, future Jason. Have you already selected a ball?
I can't see it.
Without mixing? Oh no, it's a schmozzle. Do you want to poke it back in?
I can't. Okay. Can I? Okay.
Oh, okay. So now mix it properly.
Oh, I did it again.
Yeah, you got to mix. You mix. She's forgotten how to mix. Mix towards you. Select away from you.
Okay. Ready?
Yep, go for it. That's well mixed now, and here comes the ball that's coming out. What number is it? Looks like a big one. Number 16. Number 16, and let's look that up. It's a low one, and it's an even. It's Galaxy Quest.
In the far reaches of the galaxy, a civilization is under siege.
We are all that is left.
They've searched the universe for a leader.
Stay tuned for scenes from next week's Galaxy Quest.
Never give up, never surrender.
He will save us.
What they got
Never give up and never surrender.
were struggling TV actors.
You are our last hope.
Where's my limo?
Okie dokie.
And they're about to put on a command performance 8 million light years away.
We are actors, not astronauts.
You are our protectors.
That was a hell of a thing.
Now,
Laredo, take us out.
You gotta move to the right.
Would you sit your ass down? You want to drive this thing?
acting like heroes.
The whole thing was just a misunderstanding.
May not be enough.
They look like little children. Hi, little guy.
Oh, darn.
DreamWorks Pictures presents Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, Alan Rickman, Galaxy Quest.
You're just gonna have to kill him.
We'll go for the mouth, the throat, his vulnerable spots.
It's a rock. It doesn't have any vulnerable spots.
Galaxy Quest has been paired with a movie called Mystery Men, which is another superhero parody movie.
In a place called Champion City, the forces of good and evil
Captain Amazing. What a surprise.
are about to collide.
Well, we've always been each other's greatest nemesis. This is Psy. Nemesis.
Nemesis.
Now, with the city's one true hero missing,
Captain Amazing is in danger.
Kaboom! Who will step forward?
You again. Wannabes.
To answer the call of justice.
Don't mess with the volcano, my man, because I will go Pompeii on your butt.
Oh, golly.
They've been waiting for this moment
The city's in peril, Lucille.
all of their lives.
Butch needs his vest back.
Well, it's my vest, too. I bought it for him.
But now that their time has come,
I'm a superhero, too. What's his power?
Excuse me. They're going to need all the help they can get.
We gotta find a lot of superheroes really quickly. State your name and power.
PMS Avenger. I only work 4 days a month. Is there a problem with that?
No. No. I am the Waffler. Waffle Man!
Am I too late to try out?
Sorry.
You're in.
Wow, my first mission and we're gonna rescue Captain Amazing. Here we go!
Universal Pictures presents.
We need to talk about your plans.
I'm going to kill you.
Right, that's the part that really doesn't work for me.
A new league of heroes that step to a different beat.
Well, I am a ticking time bomb of fury.
I don't find you threatening at all.
Let's do some carnage.
We're not your classic heroes. We're the other guys.
Mystery Men.
I'm invisible. Can you see me?
Yes.
Wow.
Maybe you should put some shorts on or something if you want to keep fighting evil today.
And there you go. They are the two movies we'll be talking about next week. Now, like I said, there's no David and Margaret review for this week's movie, so we'll just play a generic David and Margaret soundtrack on the way out. Any final words or coughs from you, Craig, before we put this one to
I think I'm going to go and quietly die now in the corner and probably...
Okay, well,
I may be alive by next week again.
We'll resurrect you for next week's show, and if there's nothing more to be said from me, it's goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
And now for the bit you've all been waiting for. It's blooper time.
I have a feeling I'm not going to have a great day today.
And the classic this week is... Sorry, I messed up.
I'm just trying to react the way I did before.
Shush.
I do it to irritate.
I know, so stop it.
Why?
Can we do it again?
Oh, no, come on, guys. I've worn these a zillion times before on screen. And I don't want to make excuses.
Well, don't make excuses then.
Well, but I'm going to.
Okay. Have you laid an egg?